Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Can Hughie Fury rise again? Can he contest for another title? Can he pick up some hardware? Is he good enough to do that? It's a big question because he's gone to world level twice in his short career and he's come up short. And we have to remember this guy is only 24 years old, but he's had two pretty high profile and big fights in his career so far. His record 21-2. It's easy to forget, just 2 years ago at 22, he was 20-0 preparing for his first title fight, which was against Joseph Parker, and that was on his home turf in Manchester. He lost a decision. It ultimately was quite a wide decision. Well, should I say a majority decision loss. There were two cards, 118, 110, and one card was a draw. After that, he's had a final eliminator with Kubrat Pulev. That followed one warm-up, tune-up fight against Sam Sexton. He lost that fight to Kubrat Pulev in Bulgaria for the IBF final eliminator, which guaranteed Pulev a shot at Anthony Joshua's IBF strap. And since then, that was 6 months ago, just over 6 months ago, he sort of dropped from the radar. Fans are no longer talking about him being in the mix for titles. Fans are not really talking about Hughie Fury at all. And generally, the chat when Hughie Fury's name is discussed, a lot of it is not positive. And some of that stems from his style, but also some of it stems from the performance against Pulev, which to some extent he was hampered by an eye injury, but that was an existing injury that he went into the fight with. He'd got an injury in sparring over the left eye, and very early in the fight, Kubrat Pulev opened up that cut. So he went into that fight, him and his team, knowing that it was a risk that it could be that cut could be reopened. And ultimately, they took the risk, and to some extent, that hampered his performance, and he looked pretty dreadful in that fight overall. All he was looking for was a right hand, and they have tried to sort of put his team, Fury, they've tried to put this down to, oh, well, it was the cut, there was blood in the eye, and it's pretty much been relied upon as the sole excuse. But as the fight went on, there were stretches in there where the cut man did a pretty good job, but Hughie Fury just looked pretty one-dimensional and was looking for the right hand and nothing more, which was a contrasting performance to the fight against Joseph Parker, where he was running all night, he was just flicking jabs, and he wasn't doing enough offensively. And this is the problem with Hughie Fury. He's kind of betwixt in between about how he wants to fight and what he wants to do, because we saw a more aggressive version of him against Sam Sexton, who is an English level or a British level fighter who he knocked out in the 5th round of their fight. It was a pretty good knockout from Hughie Fury, but it seemed to be, at least to the view of some, including myself, that he fell in love with the right hand, thinking he was a very big puncher, and that was what he took into the Kubrat Pulev fight. And even early on, before the cut was opened up, he was looking to unload that punch. But obviously Kubrat Pulev, a pretty wily campaigner, he was able to pretty comfortably take a decision against Hughie Fury. I'm just looking at the cards here. 118, 110, 117, 111. There was a closer card of 115, 113, which, in my view, given Fury's performance, and it wasn't that great, that was a pretty charitable card. There was only one point, I think, where the right hand really landed and put Kubrat Pulev under any pressure and sort of rocked him to some extent. But apart from that, Pulev was the one sort of making the play, conserving his energy, and easily outpointing Hughie Fury. But there is that open question: what extent did the eye injury hamper his performance? And I think many people are looking at Hughie Fury based on that performance and the non-aggression in the Joseph Parker fight, and people have just gone cold on him, and he's quickly become this forgotten man in the division. At only 24, he can certainly come again, but is he going to learn the lessons? And what are they going to do now with his rebuild? Because you have this Chris Norrad fight. He's a guy 17-0 with, wafer-thin resume. And I was thinking about this, if you were the broadcaster, Channel 5, because obviously Hennessy Sports, which promotes Hughie Fury, has a deal in place with Channel 5 to show Fury fights or whatever, I think I would be pretty disappointed with the caliber of opponent, because this is going to be on at prime time, exposed to millions of viewers. Remember, the Sam Sexton fight drew in 3 million people to watch it. And the caliber of opponent is just dreadful. And the card's probably not going to be that deep overall. So you have to ask yourself, what sort of viewing spectacle is this going to be? But also, what's the value of, him facing this guy that is really so overly, horribly overmatched here? And if Hughie Fury gets a KO, a good-looking KO, well, so what? And that's the thing. I mean, the level of opponent is such that, that's just a Canadian guy with a padded record. That it is what it is. So it's hard to know what we can take from what will be a win on May 25th on Channel 5. But also, what are they going to do with him next? Because in the past, his trainer, and who's also his father, Peter Fury, has talked about, Hughie Fury as a world-level fighter, and that he was sort of talking down the likes of fights with Joe Joyce, for example, because he was aiming above sort of English or British level at world level. But I think we've seen Hughie Fury has come up short twice now at world level, but even in some of the promotional material that they put out, it always seems to be that there's a bit of an excuse used to try talk away the reason of the loss. And I'll sort of come to this just now. I'm just having a look at the press release. Fury has his first fight since his loss to Kubrat Pulev when he pushed the Bulgarian the full 12 rounds in Sofia. He didn't really push him the 12 rounds. Kubrat Pulev was fighting in a way that he wasn't taking too many risks, but he was the one dictating the pace, dictating the action, and he won that comfortably enough. And then it goes on to say this will be Fury's first fight back in his home city of Manchester since his WBO world title challenge against Joseph Parker in September 2017 that ended controversially when many felt that Fury had beaten the New Zealander. Well, there was some who thought that Fury beat Joseph Parker, but it wasn't exactly like, everyone was thinking that way. The way and the manner in which he fought, it didn't lend himself to the judges and what they were looking for scoring, hence the two 118-110 cards to Joseph Parker, who was the aggressor coming forward, and Fury was effectively, as people say, on his bike all night, flicking out jabs and not really doing too much, not really engaging that often. I had that fight really, really close, but I certainly didn't have it, well in Hughie Fury's favour. He wasn't throwing out enough punches to win rounds conclusively, and this is what the judges had obviously come to the conclusion. And after that, they said that Hughie Fury, Peter Fury, that they were going to work on these things, that they realised that he hadn't been throwing enough right hands. He needed to let the right hand go more. He needed to do more generally on the offensive end instead of just, running and flicking out the odd shot, that he had to stand and trade a bit more, let his hands go. And you've seen in some of the different fights that he had since then that Fury, his trainer, Peter Fury's been imploring him to go to work on the offensive end a bit more. But I guess, Fury is still trying to work out a bit of a blend from his running sort of style on the back foot, using movement to try implement a bit more aggression, because we saw in the Kubrat Pulev fight, it didn't really work. But, what sort of part did the eye injury play? But whereas the Sexton fight, it did work. He knocked him out. But that was a guy at a level he was expected to beat him handily enough, and he did. But it gets to that next level, and can he actually work over another opponent? Because there are some questions about how powerful is this guy. But he can't just expect to come back to the sort of world level or fringe world level and just be trying to knock people out and looking one-dimensional. He's got to try blend these things together. And is he going to be able to beat a top 20 opponent at this point? I mean, maybe with careful matchmaking, but I think many of the top 10 guys, or at least the top 15, you'd probably pick them to beat Hughie Fury at this point. I think we've seen enough of Fury to know that he's still got a few holes in his game and some things he needs to work on, especially on the offensive end. And, obviously he was telegraphing that right hand, something chronic in the Pulev fight. He needs to be able to set up his work better, but it's blending in the two sort of, obviously he wants to move, he wants to, drag his opponent around the ring. He wants to try, wear them down, wear them out, use his technical ability, which he is a decent technical fighter, but trying to put that in together with a bit more aggression seems to be something that he can't sort of quite find the spot for right now. What do you make of Hughie Fury? Can he come back? Can he be the fighter that his father, Peter Fury, and Hughie Fury himself says that he's going to be? He says his desire to be a world champion is burning fiercer than ever inside him, and that he will get there. And it all starts on May the 25th. But, the opponent here, it's, that's not going to tell us anything. We don't know what he's been working on. We don't know how he's sort of faring physically. mentally. He's come up short twice now, and yeah, what do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.